wanted to follow up on a conversation that we had about 7 months ago concerning the Washington Commanders, as they were, NFL's Washington Commanders, that used to be the Washington football team, and before that, the Washington Redskins. Now, of course, in the wake of St. George Floyd's death, as we recall, in the summer of love 2020, everything that the wokesters and the woke progressives could get their hands on and change and erase history, they did. Well, that included our sports teams. However, the people and the cultures that were represented by those sports team nicknames and by those sports mascots, well, they didn't necessarily want to be replaced and changed. They didn't realize they were offended at the time. I'm so glad we have our faithful progressives in all kinds of corporate and government leadership to let us know when we, the feeble-minded, are supposed to be offended. Thank you so much. Well, we have a board member of the Native American Guardians Association with us here. I was able to record the interview just a couple of days ago. So I'm going to go right now to that interview, my interview with Mark OneWolf from the Native American Guardians Association. We get into the history of the name Redskins. Is it really racist? Does it really mean savage scalper and all the things that we talk about? We get into that and a whole lot more. Let's check it out. Mark OneWolf, again, Associate Board Member for Native American Guardian Association. Thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time. It's good to see you.
Well, thank you so much. I want to say I appreciate the opportunity to get our side of the story out there as well. There's been obviously a vocal minority of Native Americans that have gotten their side of the story that that was kind of the catalyst to start the name change. And I always refer to our side as the silenced majority. According to the polls of the Washington Post, there's like 90-some%. Annenberg had back in 1994, they had some polls out. Well, reflect anything the Washington Post polls did back in 2019 and 2020. That 90% of some upwards of 90% of Native Americans don't have a problem with the term Redskin, and we recognize it as part of our heritage and culture.
I want to talk about that. First, before we get there, just a little bit about you. Like we mentioned, you're an associate. You're on the board with Native American Guardians Association. Maybe explain a little bit about NAGA, what the group's purpose and focus is, and your role in NAGA.
Well, absolutely. So NAGA is kind of the child of this sort of name debate in the first place, because we were not as I was kind of doing my thing, battling on social media and trying to get my perspective as a Chiricahua Apache, saying, hey, listen, I didn't get the memo that I'm supposed to be offended by this name, and then there were some other like-minded American Indians, and there was one of the founders of NAGA, Eunice Davidson. She had fought a battle for the Fighting Sioux. She's a Lakota woman, and they up in Spirit Lake, and they had fought for the Fighting Sioux name, and she wrote a book called "Are We Sioux Enough?" And that was because they had a super majority in their tribe that overwhelmingly voted to keep the Fighting Sioux name, yet it was still canceled anyway. So despite their cries to, hey, look, this is part of our pride, this is the part of our heritage, they were canceled. So we connected, like I said, a group of like-minded American Indians. We all connected and put our heads together, came up with NAGA and said, hey, listen, we're better as a collective than we are individually, and that's kind of how it started.
I wanted to ask you this too. So this also came through on our YouTube channel today, and in fact, my previous interview with the NAGA and two representatives from about 5, 6, maybe 7 months ago. That's been our highest rated episode so far on YouTube. Now, the overlords, the algorithmic censorship overlords, took it upon themselves to highlight a comment that I didn't highlight. I run the channel and own it. I can highlight comments or pin them or whatever. I didn't highlight this comment. YouTube did, and it was a comment. I'll put it on the screen later when this airs, but for now, I'll just summarize it for you. But it was from obviously a user. Watch it, and he said, he used the word Redskins in quotes, but then said that that term goes back to basically like savage scalpers, effectively.
Oh,
I'm paraphrasing that.
Right.
And he says that is why it's so racist, and that's why it's so offensive, and on and on and on. I found it interesting that YouTube highlighted that comment out of all of the others that expressed the exact same, just about the exact same position that you do, which is probably, as you mentioned, that's probably a reasonable majority opinion from the Native American community, that why would you erase our culture and just nothing, and it's just gone. And so I think it's a good opportunity here. What does Redskins really mean? When is the term offensive, if it ever is? Give us the real history, because again, YouTube wants people who watch this segment to believe the opposite about everything that you and I are talking about.
Right, and that is extremely unfortunate, because the notion that the Redskin came from some sort of practice of bounty hunting and scalping or whatever like that has been completely debunked, not only by a world-renowned anthropologist and linguist, Ivis Goddard of the Smithsonian Institute. He detailed in the origins of where Redskin came from, and like I said, the origins are from the Algonquin language. And the Algonquin, Algonquin language, it stretches all across the country into the Eastern Seaboard and all the way down into down the Eastern Seaboard. But during the French, the French occupied these areas, and the French were familiar with these Algonquin tribes, and they translated the Algonquin word into French. And then after the French and Indian War, then that's when the term Redskin came about, because then the allegiances had to change because the French lost the war. And so the allegiances of the American Indian allegiances to the French now changed to the British. And so then they translated from and I'm not even going to try to pronounce the French word because I don't speak French, but from that it translated into Redskin. This is documented. This is not an opinion. This is a documented fact. And then we know that there was never a widespread a practice of like just randomly saying, okay, we're gonna go collect bounties off of these Indians or whatever like that. There was a the Phipps Proclamation, where the Penobscot Indians were targeted. This was way before America was even founded or whatever. But one of the pieces that sort of be the smoking gun that they use is a little clip from a Minnesota an ad from the Minnesota newspaper, where they talk about that. They're talking about collecting bounties and things. They say, wanted dead Indians. That was the first thing they said. And it says, and I'm just paraphrasing right now because I'm not directly quoting, but it's like, it's X amount of dollars for every Redskin, every Redskin killed or whatever like that. So if Redskin is quote unquote a bloody scalp, how do you kill a bloody scalp? Even the article that they put it. So Redskin in that sense was only a synonym for Indian. So they say wanted dead Indians, and then it said for every Redskin killed, $5 for every Redskin killed or whatever like that, right? So this came about from the Minnesota uprising. There's a historical account where there was a treaty. Long story short, the treaty was broken, and there were these what they consider outlaw Indians. And just like with any other outlaws, they sometimes they put a bounty. I'm pretty sure Billy the Kid probably had a bounty on him as well. Jesse James, all the outlaws, everybody had a bounty. The Apache Kid, had a bounty. So this was just the practice of trying to track down these particular outlaws that had broken, were allegedly broken the treaty, and so that's what that whole little is not smoking gun to say that Redskin means bloody scalp or anything like that. Like I said, it was disproven by anthropologists and linguists. Not only that, I like to quote, I like to talk about another linguist, Jeffrey Nunberg. Jeffrey Nunberg testified on behalf of Amanda Black Horse against the Redskins, and he agreed that it had a benign origin, that it had nothing to do with bloody scalps or anything like that, that the origins were benign, but through a linguistic process of pejorizing a word or creating a pejorative from a word, similar to the word like gay, for example, how the word gay means happy and cheerful, but then it evolved into something else. Mm-hmm. And then consequently it's been ameliorated to something that people take pride in now. And so that was that's their testimony in the Supreme Court. That's a Supreme Court testimony that Redskins has nothing to do with bloody scalps from their own expert witness, from the opposition's own expert witness. So to sit here or for YouTube or the algorithm or any to highlight anything about bloody scalps is just I'm appalled.
There certainly is an industry, and there really is, and it's probably multi-billions of dollars, but certainly many millions of dollars, an industry in victimhood, in claiming victimhood, and because our elected leaders profit off that victimhood, and sure. So they have made an industry out of that. I got just a couple of minutes left. When I first talked with, I talked, Frank Blackcloud was one of the members I talked with and or spoke with, and the petition was just getting going. I think at the time there was a little less than 100,000 signatures or so on to change the Commanders back to the Redskins. Of course, lately, even President Donald Trump he's at least talked tough about it anyway, but sure. He does say a lot of things, but nonetheless, he weighed in, and that does have effect and does apply pressure. Where is the petition at now, and how optimistic are you that the Washington Redskins may once again be the Washington Redskins?
I don't think there's any better place for a football team of the National Football League that is internationally known to have that moniker that was given. It was a gift by American Indians. It was an intertribal group of American Indians. Blackie Wetzel was then the president of the National Congress of American Indian that came to the Washington Redskins at the time and said, hey, look, if you want to honor American Indians, put an Indian on the side of that helmet. And this was that logo of Chief Two Guns Whitecap is what they gave them. To say that logo is some sort of caricature, and to say that logo is some sort of disgrace or anything like that, that logo or that profile was enough to be on our Buffalo nickels. We have mm-hmm. American Indians on our currency and everything like that. And I think that's a good, we have a right to be there because we help. We've touched every part of this country in terms of its founding and everything. We talk about the founding fathers and stuff, but they always omit the fact that the Iroquois Confederacy, the Great Laws of Peace, is an outline for our founding documents, the U.S. Constitution. It was 150,000 signatures, or more than 150,000 signatures on that petition, and I think that the Washington football fans and NFL football fans in general who use that name, for them to be called racist and for them to be accused of going against American Indians, these people, these fans were actually the ones who supported the 90%, who supported, the majority of American Indians in upholding the pride in that name, Redskins, upholding the pride in that logo of Chief Two Guns Whitecap, and also preserving the legacy of of Indians in football, because what a lot of people find famous for or noteworthy of the Redskins was that they were the last team to integrate black people onto their team, but they were the first team to integrate because they had Native Americans. Back in 1933, they had Native Americans on their team. They had a Native American coach, Lone Star Dietz, and they had 7 Native American players. They didn't just ride the bench either. They played. And just like when our first black player didn't just ride the bench, he played. So everybody else who had the quote unquote, no offense, but token black person on their team to ride the bench just so they can say that they had a black person on the team. The Redskins were different in that. They played this guy. Not only that, but they made him a manager later on. I think to say that people choose American Indians to be a football team's logo or mascot or whatever you want to call it, to say that they do that because they want to make fun of us is completely the opposite of any time they choose the Lions or the Patriots, or they choose those things because they respect them. And I believe they choose the Indians, the Redskins, the Braves, and anything having to do with American Indians because they respect us. Because like I said, I'm one voice, I'm a Chiricahua Apache, just one voice. But if my voice is, I'm listening to the Sioux from Pine Ridge, and I'm listening to Navajos from Navajo country, and Comanches and Kiowa Indians, and we're all coming to the same conclusion. Okay, we all can't be wrong, right? So,
amen to that. All right, Mark OneWolf from Native American Guardians Association. Thank you for being with us.